Hi friends, I'm Neeraj Kumar. Welcome to my channel B-simplified, where I bring to you yet another video on simplification. So the topic today, which I'm going to discuss, is about the software business. Now, why do I choose that topic is essentially, I also have had requests from some of the engineering graduates coming out of college, just joining the industry, where they say that they're also bombarded with a lot of terms which helps them select companies. So, in other words, they talk about the product based companies or service based companies. Now, they want to understand these terminologies or these concepts better. What do we mean by this? And this is where, for example, I wanted to take a step back and explain what is the business of software. And once we understand that, we are also able to qualify these companies based on whether they are product based companies or service based companies. What's the difference between these? How do they operate? What's the model and things like that. So as far as possible, I will try to keep this complex topic as simple as possible. And so let's dive straight in. Okay. So, as I mentioned, I will talk about software business. Now, before I do that, one common equation in business, which is often encountered and which is the main key principle of whatever we do in business, is something like this. So, any business what we are talking about has to earn profit. So if a business does not earn profit, it is a hobby, as they say, right? So every business has to earn a profit. I also hear from certain people saying that, hey, but non-profit organizations, right? They are non-profit, as the name suggests. But maybe I like to spend a few seconds to explain that even for non-profit organizations, it's not that they don't want to earn profit or they don't earn profit. The only difference is that the profit which they earn is fed back into the company's operations. It is not distributed to shareholders or as dividends. Or something like that. So, in other words, they do earn profit, but the earnings are fed back into the company. That's the key difference. But they do earn profit. So, coming back, the principle, the key equation, the fundamental equation, which is there for business, is this, right? As simple as it can get. So revenue minus costs is equal to margin profit. So basically, for any business, I am providing something to my customers, right? It can be product, it can be service. I'm providing something to customers, and in exchange for that, I'm getting money. And while providing that service and the product, there are certain costs which I have incurred. So usually, the case should be that whatever I get from those customers should be more than the cost which it took to provide the service. As simple as that. Okay. Now, software operates in, or the software business operates in a similar manner. Okay, so what do we mean then, this distinction between products and the services based company, and when did it come from? So, let me start with something which had happened quite a few decades back, right? So, these terms were coined. So, the way how these software businesses operated based on the category of the value which they provided, they were divided into product companies, and then there were service companies. Service companies. Okay, so let's deep dive into each one of them. So at the outset, let me mention is I'll provide you the distinction and the key competencies required for that. What's the basic model? What's the basic principle of these companies? But essentially, you will see a lot of companies now. They are neither pure product based companies nor pure service based companies, and these companies are also called hybrid companies. And I will also give you a basic introduction of what's the motivation behind that, what led to that, and things like that. Okay, but before that, let's come to the fundamentals and understand basically the difference between these two sections. Okay, now the analogy which you can use for this product based companies is that the product based companies build a product once. So what makes these companies profitable? So they build the product once, right? And the same product is sold to multiple customers. So I repeat, so they build the product once, and the same product can be used by multiple customers. So in that sense, in other words, the marginal cost of getting a new customer and then the cost of serving that new customer is very, very low. So in other words, if you build that software once and you can acquire multiples and thousands of customers without really increasing your costs. So that is the lure for these product based companies. So this lure is in general called as economies of scale, which means as you scale, the cost per customer, or for example cost of producing that particular software for per customer, reduces because it is spread across multiple customers. So in that sense, if I look back at the equation which I was talking about, revenue minus cost, so if this is x is the number of customers, and we charge a price for each, which will give us the revenue, and minus cost equal to margin. So if you see that the number of customers, if x increases, this side of the equation really increases, but as I mentioned, the cost of serving these multiple do not increase exponentially with that, and this is what leads to real high margins and profit for these product based companies, and this is the lure, which in other terms we call it economies of scale. So this is the key way how the business of product based companies operate. So they want to build a kind of a standardized software and sell it to the market at large, because that should serve the needs of multiple customers in that market. You can also take an analogy of a book. You write the book once and you can sell multiple copies of that book to the market. So you are not for each customers, now you are not writing the book or updating the book, right? So you have wrote it once, that's the cost for you. You have done that, and then you are selling it to multiple of customers. This is an analogy which you can take when it comes to product based companies. So that's basically the real lure and the real value of operating in a product environment with the software business. Now, as I mentioned, so nothing comes for free. So what could be the skills and competencies required to operate in such kind of an environment, right? Um, One thing, if you can see now, is as we are talking about one standardized product which serves the multiple needs, which serves the needs of multiple customers and the market as such, we really need to understand and take time, invest in finding out what are the common needs or unmet market needs. So I've talked about this in my previous video when it came to innovation, but the entire investment or effort to find out the market needs is an essential competency of these product-based companies, and they spend quite a lot of money and personnel to do that. So market research to find that market where my product can sell um, uh, is very important, and that is why all those market sizing, the attractiveness of this market, this is so importantly dealt with when it comes to choosing those markets for the products which they operate. So market research is a very important competency and skills for these companies. They have to find such markets which can give them these economies of scale. In addition to that, then they have to build that product in such a way that it is not one customer, but it should be working for multiple customers. So the overall product development, architecture, scaling, or you can say the entire product thinking, right, is something which is very important for these product-based companies. So how to build a product which is not for individual sections, but can serve the entire market at a large, how to build that product. So how can we bake that thinking directly into development architecture is very important. And the other part, as I just mentioned, is understanding first of all what is that need which is common across that particular segment or the market. So this is what is the pure lure of product-based companies. And if you see that a lot of companies have made huge margins and money when the product becomes hit. So for example, if your product is really hit in the market, you become really big. And you see that there are a lot of examples of these kind of companies, Microsoft being one for sure, SAP, Oracle with its database products. Business Objects, I think, is acquired by SAP now, but I think once it was an independent company, uh, uh, there were humongous margins which this company operated with. It was a great success story when it comes to that. So these are the various examples of some of these companies who have really made it big. They have understood the real need of the market in that sense, build a product to handle that need, and as I said, marginal cost of building each copy of it is pretty less. They have been really profitable. Now, just as a side remark, you will see that a lot of investors also invest in these product-based companies because of that lure, as I just mentioned, the lure of high margins if the product becomes a kind of a hit. Okay, so that's the product section, product-based companies. Now, what about the service-based companies? Now, let's also put the same equation here. And operate it. So even for service-based company, if you see, the equation holds good, but the costs of acquiring new customers, working with them, is not um, is not that low as and when the new customers come. So for example, in this particular case, the key thing which the service company operates with it, they talk to individual customers, right? And they build software and provide services like customization, enhancement, like for example, installation, upgrade, update. So basically services for individual customers, right? So as and when new customers come into their space, so as their business grows and they acquire new customers, the costs also are not marginal because they have to have those kind of personnel for each customers. It is not that the service can be provided once for all the customers together, right? So service has to be done for individual customers. So the marginal costs with new customers coming in are not that low. So in that case, if you see, the margins of service-based companies are not as high as product-based company. That's from a business perspective. We need to understand this and why, as I just mentioned, because the key operation principle of the service-based company, the lure here is economies of scope. So in other words, before I try to demystify that word for you, what it essentially means is they work with individual customers to understand their needs and then tailor and build software for those needs. It could be enhancing of their existing software which they might have purchased, or building a software directly to serve those needs. So basically then the entire process of requirement gathering, especially, and these things happen with these companies, and we call it the project, and they have to basically work together with some of the counterparts of these customers. So it is one customer at a time. Now, when I say lure is economies of scope, what what does it mean is, usually they would like to basically have personnel which can be put into different projects. So it could be the case that it is not profitable for these companies if they hire a personnel who is good in Java and can just work on software for the financial industry. Then they don't achieve these economies of scope. So in other words, they want a pool of resources which can be used for multiple client engagements. So as and when I have that pool with generalist skills and competencies, I am profitable, because in that sense I can use any one of them to serve the needs of my multiple clients, because they are all skilled enough. So for example, when it comes to Java development, okay, the same guy can be used for a healthcare client, for a financial client, for a manufacturing client, and things like that. So basically the lure is economies of scope, and the main effort which these guys put in is to build skills and competencies which are general and can be applied to multiple clients as such. So if you see that the skills and competencies which are important in this case is client management. They need people and personnel who can basically talk to customers, understand their specific needs, work very very closely with them to build that kind of a relationship building is very very important for service based companies. It's also important for product based companies as such, but you can imagine the magnitude of importance when it comes to service based companies, because they're working with one client at a time for those kind of projects, and so they have to understand their needs and work very, very closely with them. Undivided attention, as I can call it. If you divide your attention and show that to the client, I think um, that might not be a very, very good proposition for the client. So client management, project management skills in the sense that, okay, if I have a project, and to really earn that, even the service-based companies needs to reduce costs, so they have to complete that project in time and quality, in scope. So that part, that how can I have individuals who can really keep a track of these time, scope, so that it's not an overrun. And because some clients in general have now also become very sensitive to these overruns. Previously, what was the case, the number of days this projects used to run, the service companies used to get money, and this is how it used to work. But I think now clients are becoming also pretty sensitive, so they are a fixed time scope, and in that sense real project management exercise is very, very important. And general technical skills. So in fact, maybe developers who can work on multiple competencies. So today, working on a Java project, but tomorrow can get into a .NET project and things like that. So basically, they can have clients with multiple different technology stacks, and it's not that for everyone we have to hire new resources. The same resources should be trained to handle multiple client requests, and that is the economies of scope, which comes into play there. So in other words, the key point here to understand here is that the service-based companies in this case work with individual clients. So client management is an important thing. Customization, installation, update, upgrade, interfacing with various customers, providing some kind of consulting, technical consulting, management consulting. These are kind of services which the services companies sell. And as this is very company specific, so they do it for each individual companies. And in that case, the kind of economies of scale does not bring in, or does not creep in. It's the economies of scope. So if I have someone who has design thinking skills, can be applied to management consulting for multiple companies. Okay. Now examples of such companies are also in abundance, starting with Indian companies like TCS, Infosys, who have really made a name in the market. Accenture being one of the multinational companies as well in this space. So this is, you can say, an essential difference between the product-based companies and the service-based companies. So the key things which you need to remember is the margins. How do the margins differ? What is the lure? Economies of scale is comes into play when it comes to product-based company. Economies of scope is something which comes into play when it comes to service-based companies. Skills and competencies, how do they vary? This is also pretty understood now here. Now, as I mentioned at the start of my video, let me also give you a brief introduction of this hybrid thing. So as I just mentioned, right, that not all companies are pure product-based companies and service-based companies. Companies have evolved. So companies also evolve to add some service division into their companies. Service companies also evolve to get some products into the market. Now I'll tell you what's the motivation behind that. So product-based companies, for example, product development is tough, right? On one hand, you really need to understand the right market, do that kind of a research, which takes time, and then you build that product and launch that product. So as the product is being launched, you are back into that activity to find new markets, new products to be launched. But you also need a steady source of revenue, and the steady source of revenue usually comes from services. So a lot of product-based companies also, what they do is they sell the license fees and all, which is basically the copy of the book which I was just talking about, but also say that, okay, if you pay me annual contract fees or annual maintenance fees, we will be providing you services with updates and upgrades of the software continuously. So this is basically the maintenance fee, is, you can say, a kind of a service revenue coming in. Also, for example, these companies say that, okay, it could be the case that the standardized software doesn't fulfill the needs of your entire business, and there might be certain customizations required. We will do those kind of customizations and get some money. So all these product-based companies also has a kind of a service divisions within them, which can help them get a steady source of revenue during the time when they are doing or trying to conceptualize new products in their R&D space. First, second, in tough times, this steady source of revenue helps, because in tough times it could be the case that the various businesses don't have enough money to spend on more capital investments with new software and things like that. But as they have paid those annual contract fees, fees or annual maintenance fees, a steady source of revenue comes to these product-based companies as well. So that are the two main reasons why all product-based companies also have a services division, have a steady source of revenue to feed in during tough times and also during the time when new product is currently in the pipeline. Okay, so that's basically the reason why you see those hybrid companies product with some service revenue. But the key aspect to look at is look at the financial statements and see what is basically the proportion of product-based revenue and service revenue coming in. For pure product-based companies, if the proportion of service-based revenue is increasing, you can say that the product company is not innovating much to launch new products in the market. So that can also give you a kind of indication of where the company is moving or heading towards. Okay, now service-based companies, how do they grow into the product-based division is usually they have that advantage that they have talked to multiple clients with their client management things and try to see that, okay, talking to multiple clients have given them an idea of what could be the common needs across that client base if this they're in the one market, and this gives them a right opportunity to build something which caters to the entire needs. So they start off as service-based companies talking to each customers, building things for them, and eventually get to know the common needs of that customer segment or the entire market in that sense, which gives them enough skills to build something. But I think the challenge becomes is they also then have to have those personnel skilled to build that kind of a product, as I said, which scales and architecturally is built to serve multiple customers. But this is how they move from the service-based mindset to the product-based company, because they have that kind of an information going forward. A lot of companies have done that. Infosys, for example, came up with the financial software division, which is a kind of a product. And similarly, there are other companies who do that as well. But as I said, the proportion of revenue which comes from product and services is also very, very different. But as I mentioned, the hybrid is the nature that they all have different versions, for example, or different divisions which are service based and product based. Okay. So I hope this gave you a fair bit of idea about how this business of software evolves and what are the various categories. We have just touched the you can say the upper layer. There are a lot of details inside it, but as I said, it's a video on simplification. This should give you a basic understanding of the concepts. Now, if you would like to drill down more, or if you find this interesting, maybe one thing which you can deep dive upon is how does cloud computing in software change these dynamics, if at all it changes the dynamics. So if at all it changes the dynamics, how does it do that, and what are the things which come into play for either product-based companies or service-based companies, and how does it change? So that would be an interesting insight for you to learn. Okay, so thanks guys, thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and have a nice day.